Peace. Peace to the gods. Peace to the goddesses. Once upon a time, not too long ago, there lived a people, a beautiful people that were kissed by the sun. And every 50 years, they would come together to celebrate this joyous relationship between them and the giver of life. On this 50th day jubilee, the oldest man in town would lead the citizens in a dance. But today was a special occasion. Not only was this a, a jubilee of the rising sun, but it was also the celebration of the victory of the final battle of the last war. These people who knew no war, knew no jail, knew no sickness, knew no crime, lived on one side surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean, but to the west, they were surrounded and bordered by the Mississippi Sea. The Mississippi Sea extended west as far as the Missouri River does in modern day, opening up to a western inland sea that has now been dried up with salt. In this land, there lived a group of creatures. These creatures dwelled under the sun, under the desert, and were optometrically opposed to these gods to live on the other side of the sea. This final battle was fought in the middle of the desert. It was set up and raged on as men riding chariots of clouds rain down on the cavemen. So, of course, this celebration was an extremely lively celebration. And once the oldest man finished his new dance, the king, the representative of the great sun, began to speak. He spoke of the day that the Great War began and how 12 strong soldiers, alarmed and upset by the kidnapping of two of their children, caused them to travel across the Great Sea in search of the homeland of these cavemen. The king told of how the war raged for hundreds of years. And now finally, the Arios or cavemen were destroyed. To commemorate this occasion, the king had decided to give away his daughter to Eru. Eru was the leader of the warriors that set out to destroy the cavemen. But the people chose Shimu as their hero, for he was more violent in battle. He was more brave in the face of peril. So as the king made his announcement for Eru, the people booed and chanted, Shimu, Shimu. So the king, the epitome of the sun, declared a race. He decided to have the winner of this race be the one to marry his daughter and therefore eventually be the great sun. So the crowd cheered, knowing that Shimu was the bravest warrior. He surely would win. But what was the race entail? So the king told everyone he would dismiss them and bring them back in a day when he would decide what the race would be about and who would win. So the people continued to party with the Jubilee. Meanwhile, the king's daughter, Shani, was distraught in total despair. She was in love with Shamu, but she knew that Ero would do anything for power, would do anything to be king, and feared for Shamu's life. She gathered her handmaidens and her wise ladies to discuss a way to help Shamu on this voyage. So she sent in the king's favorite wine bearer to give the king some corn liquor to help him decide the rules of the battle. As the handmaiden entered into the room, to her surprise, Ero was in the room discussing the battle, the race rules with the king. So the handmaiden began to pour wine and listen as the two gentlemen began to discuss the rules of the race. To this point, they had decided that the race will be a race around the world. and it would be a race to all of the outpoints of the Atlanteans, and it would be who could gather the most illustrious and exotic gifts for the princess and return the fastest. Knowing that Ero had connections in all of these places and contacts from his wealthy elite friends, the handmaiden suggested they find the Eye of Famu, which was a legendary stone hidden in the caves of Egypt. Hidden there by the creators of the cavemen, said to be the one stone that can control their mind. The king leapt at the idea. Longing for the power of the eye, not just for the control of the creatures of the underworld, but for the power to control the future that lied in the seeing eye. Ero objected, but the handmaiden persisted, and the king indulged. So the next day it was declared the two warriors would race around the world, stopping at all of the ports of the Atlanteans and collect treasures and bring them back for the princess's honor. Ero gathered his best soldiers and set sail in the finest crafts known to man, accompanied by his flying clouds, which are modernly translated, and also a weapon of mass destruction. Emo, Shimo, set forth with his humble friends from his town of Kilo, and they boarded 4 ships to journey around the world. Shamu set east. Ero went west, and the race was on. The king sat on shore, wondering what it would be like to possess the Eye of Famu, to control the abominable beasts of the underworld, to see into the future, His daughter hoped and prayed that Shamu would make it back first. Little did, little did Shamu know that Eros had a plan for him, and at their first stop in Africa, the created creatures were waiting, and the gods of Kilwa, the small town that created Shamu, were not ready for the giants they had encountered on the shores of Africa. See, these Atlanteans had once created outposts around the world, and they had peopled those outposts with hybrid humans, hybrid animals, with specific purposes and specific jobs. But throughout the ages, the upper class had begun to misuse and abuse their power over the created creatures. So instead of just mining, instead of just foraging and building the forest as they were created to do, agriculture, these giants were waiting in prey for Shamu to disembark his vessel. A battle ensues. The giants surround the men. They ring the bell for them to open the gates in the town. As they swipe and swing and slash and shoot bows and arrows at giants that attack a small group of Atlanteans come out of the city and assist Shamu and his men as they enter the gates. These men inform them that they have been under attack by these giants for the past 6 months and that they were unaware that the battle was over. Shamu dispatched men back to the city to let the people know what was the situation in Africa. As they filled him in, they explained that some of the elite have decided to not send back the shares to keep more for themselves. They have created an army of Neanderthals, an army of cavemen that mine and art and farm just for them. And now they have turned those men on the city. Pressed for time, knowing that he must win this race, Shamu begs them for treasure so that he can show the princess that he went there and was greeted welcome. The men said they have no treasure, it was taken. But if you help us defeat the caveman, our treasure lies within their walls. With no other choice, the great hero devises a plan to engage the African caveman. Meanwhile, Eros heads west. He lands in Yucatan, where he meets the Yukips, the aristocrats, socialites, who welcome him with open arms and explain to him in great detail how their war has been going with his help. They inform him of the attack in Africa and how they have Shamu surrounded and how they hope he will never make it out in time to finish the race. Overjoyed, Eros thanks his fellow aristocrats and receives his treasure. He tells him of his plans to inform each stop on the way that he will be the new king and there is no need to revolt any longer as long as Eros marries the daughter. Uton, run by the Jacobs, the U Cubs, have created four types of men. They have werewolves, hybrid men mixed with wolves and coyotes. You have hobbits and cavemen, hybrid men mixed with pigs and goats. You have giants, hybrid men mixed with apes. And you have the monkey man, hybrid men mixed with howler monkeys. These Jacobs from the Yucatan have placed their hybrids all over the globe at all of the stations of the Atlanteans, seemingly as harmless workforces, as harmless miners, as harmless farmers. They have been turned into terrorist cells to destroy the Atlantean Empire. Back in Africa, Shamu and his men have gathered up the Atlanteans inside of the African fort. They have decided to draw attention to the south gate, allowing men to creep up behind the slow, unmaneuverable giants. Unlike Eros, Shamu has no flying clouds. He has no balloons in the sky, which would make easy work of giants. No, Shamu must rely on surprise and agility. He commands the Atlanteans in Africa to open the gate. Open the gate, I tell you. They open the gate. He runs through the castle door, cuts off the head of the first giant that he sees, stands on his body and screams, I am Atlantis. Who dares challenge me? The giants are frozen. They're stuck. They've never seen such bravery, such skill. Then from the back of the crowd walks the biggest giant. Looks down with a grunting laugh. Pulls out his stick, as thick as a tree stump. Prepares to swing, but lo, Shamu gives the signal, and a horn blows from behind. The villagers and the men from Kau rage out the gates. Disoriented, the giants begin to flee. Shamu runs up the stick, grabs the lion by his nose, and cuts off his head. The giants retreat. The men rout them as they flee. Shooting them with arrows and pummeling them. men pursue, chasing them away from their cave. Now, now is the time, Shamu, he runs inside of the cave. He retrieves treasures more than he can handle, more than he can grab. Runs back to the boat and sets sail. These is Atlantis. Stay tuned for part 2.